Shanti, Shanti. Last week we covered the three transactions of life: the receipt, the reaction, and the response. The receipt, reaction, and response is what is known as the karta and the bhokta. When you are receiving and reacting, you are known as the experiencer, bhokta. When you are responding, you are known as the karta, the doer. So, how to transfer all the activities of the experiencer and the doer into worship? How to convert all the aspects of the experiencer and the doer into worship is what we are going to discuss from verse number 26 onwards. So first we will talk about first we spoke about, I'm just recapturing what we have done till now. The ideals that we pursue in life can be of two: limited and absolute. Limited ideal is that which pertains to the world. Anything of the world is known as a limited ideal. It is called limited because it is limited. That is why do we call that as limited? Because it is limited. Limited in the sense it has a beginning and an end. Limited because it has a beginning, it has an end. Second, it is limited because there is no shashvata to it. There is no permanency to it. You may get it, but there is no permanency to it. So the second thing is there is no limited in the sense there is no permanency to it. Limited in the sense it doesn't give you the satisfaction. Anything in the world doesn't have this capacity to give you a satisfaction. You may say, sir, I'm very satisfied. Now what happens if what you have is taken away from you? Satisfaction goes out. So limited means a dependent satisfaction. Limited means a satisfaction that is dependent on factors which is not under your control. Limited means you are at the mercy of the others. All this put together in one word we call as limited. Second thing, what we call as absolute is, first thing, a satisfaction, a happiness that is not dependent upon anything. A satisfaction, a happiness, a peace or contentment that is not dependent upon anything. Absolute in the sense that cannot be taken away from you. You cannot lose it. That is absolute. So in life, you can have these two ideals: pursuing something that is limited, pursuing something that is absolute. So you have these two ideals to pursue. Now, the ideal is dependent upon now what ideal you fix. Vedanta doesn't come and say, fix this ideal. It says you have these two options, and if you are wise, you will pursue the absolute ideal. It suggests to pursue the absolute ideal. Why it suggests to pursue the why it suggests us to pursue the absolute ideal is because whether worldly or whether it is limited or absolute, the effort is the same. Effort is the same. The consequences are different. Again, I repeat, it asks us to pursue the absolute ideal because the effort is the same. The results are different. When I say the effort is the same means whether it is worldly or spiritual, you need to put in effort. So in that effort part, there is no change. In the effort part, there is no distinction, there is no difference. The effort part remains the same. What changes is the result. The consequences, the result are diametrically opposite. What you are looking at is the absolute result. Since you are looking for the absolute result, might as well pursue that. That's the whole suggestion of Vedanta. Since you are looking at an absolute, since you are looking at that absoluteness, might as well pursue that absolute ideal. Having set the ideal is very important because ideal gives a direction to life. Ideal gives a direction to your activities. Ideal gives a purpose to life. Ideal is so important in life because it gives a sense of purpose to existence. It gives a sense of purpose to your activities. Minus that ideal, your activities will lack purpose. You wake up in the morning and you say, there is nothing to do. Whole day's existence has no meaning. So ideal is that which gives you a kind of, ideal is that which gives a purpose to your activities, purpose to your very existence itself. Lastly, ideals are not meant to be achieved. Ideals are meant to be a direction. Understand the difference. It's not that you fix an ideal. Ideals are not for attainment and achievements. Ideals is always to give a direction to activities. Having said all this, we went on to discuss who is this individual working for an ideal. What is the nature of this individual? What is he doing constantly? What is he doing constantly? He is acting. Acting in the sense of receipt, reaction, and response. This receipt, reaction, and response is always aimed at what is known as, in whatsoever a person wants to do, he wants to excel in that. He wants to be successful in that. He wants to be perfect in that. Whatsoever a person does, he wants to excel, he wants to be perfect, he wants to be successful in that. Now, what does it mean? How do you get it? There are two factors to it. Yajna karma comes in here. There are two factors to it. The two factors is, one is prayatna, karma, your effort. Second is the grace, God. Two things for success. One is your effort. Your effort means your planning, your sincerity, your concentration, your dedication, now you bring in all that, which is what your effort part is. And then there is something known as God. God in the sense of unseen support. Please understand, God means unseen support. God is not a blesser. God is not a giver. God is the unseen support. What is that unseen support? One is the seen support. Another is the unseen support. Now, your success is always dependent upon the unseen factors also. Like for example, the last 60 days, the last 90 days, nobody have planned for all this. Or everybody's plans have gone for a toss. So, even though the prayatna, the effort has been hard work, dedication, sincerity and all that, that extra factor always plays a role. That extra factor. Now, that recognition of that extra factor makes karma into an yajna karma. Recognizing that there is an extra factor too. What is that extra factor? The extra factor is unseen. What we have symbolically called as God. So don't take God means independent of your effort. Effort plus unseen. The technical name for God in the Upanishads, the Vedanta talks about as karma pala data. Not ishtapala data. They don't say God is ishtapala data. Whatever you wish, he will give. It is never said like that. We may believe God is like that. We may believe God means whatever I wish, he will grant. I wake up in the morning, I want a degree coffee. God will send a degree. God will send degree coffee to me. And then breakfast I want, I don't know, whatever breakfast I want, God will send to me. He is not an ishtapala data, he is the karma pala data. Karma pala means according to what you have done. According to what you have done, plus the totality. Recognizing this totality in and through all your activities makes your actions yajna karma. See, I'm just summarizing all that we have seen already in detail. All that, if you remember from yajna number 3, it will be easy to follow what he's saying. I am saying all this is you need to remember all this. So the person, the individual is acting for an absolute ideal, and what is he? The receiver, reactor, responser. The receiver of the stimuli, he is the reactor to the stimuli, he is the responser to the stimuli. Responses back to the world. So these are the 3 transactions: receive, reaction and response. Actions are done with the support of seen and unseen. Now the yajna starts. Now we start going into the yajnas. Verse number 26, where we talk about those of you who have the book, remember, keep to the yajna cycle, which is in the commentary of verse number 25. I told this couple of weeks back itself. Keep the commentary where in the verse number 25, the yajna cycle is there. So we will be following that pattern. We will be following that pattern with the individual verses. So when I say yajna number 3 and 4, you have to refer to the cycle. Yajna number 5, 6, 7, 8, you have to refer to the cycle. Ideally speaking, you should mentally refer to the cycle. You should not keep going back and looking at the diagram. You see it once, you absorb it. At least that much of minimum medhavi we need. At least that much of minimum knowledge we need. Sometimes what happens, I have experienced it. Every class, the person comes and sits afresh. You know what it means? He's not very objective, Allah. Not very objective. All that is said in the past is completely wiped out, and he's sitting afresh na. I can only talk about 1 + 1, 1 + 1, 1 + 1 only. We cannot go to the higher lessons at all, because avlo fresh vanda we have to maintain that only. So at least for this yajna, at least for this 12 yajnas, we will slightly shift the gear and we try to remember it in this way. What is it? Remember the cycle yajna, which is in the commentary of verse number 25, the 12 yajnas. Now we move on to verse number 6, which talks about yajna number 3 and yajna number 4. Verse number 26 is going to talk about yajna number 3 and yajna number 4. First, we read the verse. श्रोत्रादीनन्ये संयमाग्निषु जुह्वति शब्दादीन् विषयानन्ये इंद्रियाग्निषु जुह्वति. श्रोत्रादीनि इंद्रियाणि अन्ये. Others offer hearing and other senses as sacrifice into the fires of restraint. Others offer sound and other sense objects as sacrifice in the fires of the senses. Now, the second sentence is third yajna. The first sentence is fourth yajna. That is because of the Sanskrit grammar and the verse construction. The second sentence is the third yajna. The first sentence is the fourth yajna. So others offer sound and other sense objects as sacrifice in the fires of the senses. Yajna number 3. Others offer hearing and other senses as sacrifice into the fires of restraint. Now he is talking about the stimuli part. He is talking about the stimuli part. The stimuli, you are receiving the stimuli, and he is talking about the stimuli part. Yajna has 2. We have seen it already. From now on, we will be hearing these 2 words, at least for the next few classes. Ahuti and kindling. Ahuti and kindling. In the yajna, there is an ahuti, there is the kind. Ahuti means that which feeds the fire is ahuti. Kindled means the fire shoots up. When the fire shoots up, it means the god is the fire god is invoked. He is happy and he is going to he will bless you. All this understand it as symbolic. So from now on, we will be discussing about ahuti and kindling. Ahuti and kindling. Now, what is the ahuti here? The first ahuti. The first ahuti is others offer sound and other sense objects as sacrifice in the fires of the senses. Now, what he is saying is, you need to know how a perception happens. You need to know how a perception happens. And how does the perception happen? You need to know how perception happens. How does the perception happen? The objects exist. The object exists in the world. The objects exist. When we say the object exists, they exist with its own gunas, qualities, with its own properties, qualities. Properties, qualities as in physical, chemical and all that. So, nama rupa. The object exists with its own individual properties and qualities. Now, when you say, I see a pot, the pot didn't enter you. The pot is there only. But a pot as a stimuli through the eyes, through the sense centers registered in the mind. And then you say, this is a pot. As sense center, you may register a perception and you may not know what it is. You can ask, what is it? One is to say, this is it. Another is to say, what is it? But nevertheless, the perception is registered. When the perception is registered, when the perception is registered, you say, I see, I hear, I smell, I taste, whatever the jnana indriya functions are. This is how the stimuli enters you. When we say the stimuli means the data through the world enters you. The data from the world through the organs enters you. And then registration of perception happens. This is the stimuli. Now, what he is saying is, sound and other sense objects, the sound and the other sense objects, meaning any sense stimuli, as it were, enters you and dies in the mind. Dies means not literally dying, registration. See, what you need to understand is Bhagavad Gita is not a prose, it's poetry. If it is a prose, it will not be that confusing. It is poetry. Poetry means that which cannot be conveyed through prose, or that which has to be conveyed through prose in volumes and volumes and volumes is conveyed through poetry in a shorter form. So it means when you are thinking, you need to know how to elaborate all that and see as deep as you can go. Are you able to follow? Prose means that which is elaborating. Poetry is that which all that elaboration is concised. So when they are concise, when it is concised, they use words. They use words which should not be taken literally. That's what I said a couple of classes back. When you are analyzing the literature, when you are analyzing the Shastra, you have to take one is the literal meaning, another is the implied meaning. In communication, this is the fundamental in communication. In communication, there is a literal meaning and then there is a implied meaning. Neighbor calls you a fool. Your friend calls you a fool. When the neighbor calls you a fool, implied, there is a direct meaning. What is the direct meaning? Direct meaning is the same in both. But then the implied meaning is different. When the neighbor says the fool, who's not a friend, assuming that is not your friend, it means there is an insult intended. So you receive the insult there. When the friend calls you a fool, you don't receive the insult. The implied meaning there is the friendship. So when we are interpreting, you need to understand the direct meaning, the implied meaning. The third is symbolic. Poetry is more implied and symbolic. Because of it is being implied and symbolic, you can have any number of interpretations. Because of it being symbolic and implied, you can have any number of interpretations. That is why Bhagavad Gita will have million commentaries on it. And no two commentaries will be of the same. There will be a difference. And what is the difference due to? The difference is due to how do you give the implied meaning and how do you take the symbolic meaning. These are all lessons in thinking. This is how studying the Shastras improve your intellect. We say studying the Shastras improve your thinking ability, makes your intellect strong. How does it do that? It teaches you the method of analysis, how to receive the communication properly. So here, don't take it literally. You have to take it symbolically. What is the symbolism here? The senses, the stimuli comes into the senses. The stimuli enters the senses and perception is registered. I see, I hear, I smell, I taste, I touch. These are the perceptions that is registered when you are doing this, when you are in the first category of the receiver. You are the receiver of stimuli. In the receiver of stimuli, what is important is the quality of the instrument is important. Supposing the quality of the instrument is dull and poor, your receipt will be that much affected by it. Therefore, the first yajna talks about the instruments and quality of the instrument. What is the quality of the instrument? All the jnana indriyas are doing their jobs perfectly. When all the jnana indriyas are doing their job perfectly, when each and every stimuli enters you and registration of perception happens, you can convert that into a worship. How can you convert that into a worship? How does this get converted into one worship? It gets converted into worship when you bring in the unseen. When you bring in the unseen, the unknowable. When you bring in that unseen and unknowable, it gets converted into a worship. So, yajna number 3. With awareness of sense perceptions, one can convert every sense perception into an yajna. With awareness of this. Awareness of what? Awareness of the vitality of the instruments, and there is something that is happening. There is something that is constantly happening, which is of your effort and which is of the divine grace. Eyes are given to you. Carefully follow. The eyes are given to you. You didn't sit and order the eye. That is the grace. You didn't. Now that is given to you, you can maintain it rightly and do worship. That is your part. Are you able to understand the difference? Before you got into this body, it wasn't decided that you were given 10 different bodies and asked to choose, no? It's not like you went into the car showroom, saw all the cars and then chose a particular car. Similarly, it didn't happen like this. It's not that there are 15 bodies your mother gave and then you choose, okay, this body I want you. It doesn't happen. It is given to you. That is the divine grace. Now that it is given to you, you can maintain it. Now that it is given to you, you can maintain it rightly. So when the sense perceptions are happening, you remember the divine and maintain it rightly. If you are doing that, yajna number 3 is happening. The senses, vitality are kept alive, and yajna number 3 is happening. Why this has to be kept in vitality? Why the senses have to be kept in vitality? Because all knowledges enters through the senses only. All knowledges enter through the senses. Like eyes, books, ears, the sound. Now all these has to be better the quality of the instrument, better would be the receipt. Now the betterment of the quality of the instrument is the worship here. When we say betterment of the quality means what? Maintaining it properly, maintaining it disciplined is the worship here. Maintaining it proper. Betterment doesn't mean you can add another ear. Betterment doesn't mean magnifying glass. See, for example, I remove this glass. I'm not able to see anything. As it is, I'm not able to see anything in the computer screen. On top of it, if this is removed, there is a book, but then nothing is seen. Now, I put this, the deficiency of the sense is, taken care of. So what do I do? So eyes for me means the glass plus the organ eye. Eyes for me is not only these two. It is these two plus this also. This also. Therefore, worship. What is worshipping now? As I take care of the senses, I take care of this also. Recognizing that without this, my sense perceptions, the knowledge of the world cannot come to me, and I am grateful to that. So, whenever you see, hear, smell, taste, touch, you can remember God. You can remember the highest. You can remember the highest. Symbolically, I explained it in detail when we did the verse number 24. Brahmarpanam, Brahmavihi, Brahmagno, Brahmanahutam. It is said as a prayer before food. Meaning, the vitality of the instruments is essential for you to gain any knowledge, and these instruments are given to you. The microscope is what you created, but the eyes to see through the microscope is not yours. This glass is what I created, but the eyes that sees through the glass is not my creation. So therefore, recognizing that, when you are recognizing that, what happens? When you recognize the unseen, when you recognize the divine grace, what happens? You become responsible. You become responsible. You become careful. You will not abuse the sense. You will not misuse the sense. You will not indulge in the sense. Because it is something that is given to you, and you need to, it is something that is given to you, you need to protect it. Upanishadic invocation explains this more clearly. Om apyayantu mamangani vakpranas chakshu shrotramato balamindriyani cha sarvani. It says. What does it mean? It means that the first yajna starts with the sense stimuli. Where does worship start? Where does worship start? Where does recognition of divine starts? The recognition of the divine starts from the sense perception itself. When you start the remembrance of the divine from the sense perception itself, you understand that you can do this prayer wherever you are, whatever you do. You don't need a specific time for prayer. You don't need a specific place for prayer. Wherever you are, whatsoever you are doing, you can do a prayer. You can convert it into an yajna, because this receipt of stimuli is what is happening all the time. Since this receipt of stimuli is what is happening all the time, so you have an opportunity to do this prayer all the time. This is how yajna number 3 starts with helping you. Since you are doing this activity all the time, through this activity, remember that there is the unseen that is supporting you. As you are going through this activity, remember that. What is in case of yajna number 3? He takes up one sense organ, one sense stimuli, and connects it to the mind. Carefully follow. He takes one sense organ and connects it to the mind. The example that he gave here is Shrotradin. Others offer sound and other sense object as sacrifice in the fires of the senses. Now, yajna number 4, there is a connection. Yajna number 4, connection. The connection with yajna number 4 is this. The connection with yajna number 4 is this. In yajna number 4, others offer hearing and other senses. Yajna number 3 is sound to hearing. Yajna number 4 is that which you heard is offered as the ahuti. Sound to hearing, and then hearing to restraint. When you do this yajna number 3 and 4, you are well disciplined in the receipt of stimuli part. Discipline for what? Discipline not for a better life. Discipline not for a happy life. See, there are people who say, I want to be disciplined, sir. That also can be a motivating factor for discipline. Another motivating factor for discipline is the recognition of the divine. In Vedanta, when we talk about discipline, we don't talk about discipline as in the category 1. We talk about discipline as in category 2. Discipline to remember the discipline as in remember the divine. When you remember the divine, what happens? Why do you have to remember the divine? Idu purinjidthuna, you will know why to do yajna karma. Why to remember the divine? Okay. What happens if you don't remember the divine? What happens if you don't remember the divine? For example, if you don't remember the divine, what is it? People say, "Ore heavier, sir." They say, no. Bharama irukku, they say, no. Abde thala romba bharama irukku, they say. Heart is abde heavier irukudilla. Idallam the consequence of forgetting the divine. If you remember the divine, what happens is all this continues, but the bhara will go away. The bharam will go. Only when the bharam goes, only when the heaviness goes, whatsoever you do, you can do it with efficiency. When you are sitting with that heaviness, whatsoever you do, you can't do it efficiently. Are you able to see the connection? Why do we have to remember the divine? If you don't remember the divine, what happens in Purunjinda? You will know what happens if you remember the divine. What happens if you don't remember the divine? Ore bharama irukku sir. Ore heaviya irukku. Ore padattama irukku. Illa padattama irukudunu artham. June 1 vanduduthuna relaxation பண்ண போறாங்க. தெரியல பண்ணுவாங்களோ மாட்டாங்களோ தெரியாது. ரிலாக்ஸேஷன் பண்ணா இன்னும் நிறைய பேருக்கு கொரோனா தான் வரப்போகுது. அதுக்கு முன்னாடியே மார்ச்லயே திறந்து விட்டுருந்துருக்கலாம் எல்லாரையும். ஒரே எல்லாம் ஒரே பதட்டமா இருக்குது. They say no. All this is not remembering the divine. The moment you remember the divine, all this goes out. When all this goes out, what happens to you? Your senses are vital. Your inner instruments, the mind and intellect is powerful. The karmendriyas are vital. So the receipt of stimuli is perfect. Your reactions are complete. Your responses would be perfect. When all these three are happening perfectly, what happens? You go to the divine. You are nearing the divine. Now you remember the divine. At another stage, you will say, I am the divine. At one stage, you remember the divine. This is what growth is all about. At one stage, you remember the divine. At another stage, you will say, I am the divine. So the difference here is, for the person who doesn't even remember the divine, where is the chance of him going to say, I am the divine law? For the person who doesn't remember the divine, what happens? Therefore, remember the divine. This is the common formula for all the 10 yajnas. So when you remember the divine in this manner, yajna number 3 and yajna number 4. What is yajna number 3? Yajna number 3 is in relation to sound to hearing. Yajna number 4 is hearing to something that is kindled. Purida sequence. Sound kindles hearing. Hearing kindles something else, no? That is yajna number 4. Yajna number 3 is sound kindles hearing. Yajna number 4 is that hearing kindles something else. What is that something else that it kindles? This is where the knowledge comes in. The sound kindles hearing. The hearing can kindle indulgence or restraint. Sound kindles hearing. Hearing can kindle indulgence or restraint. Now, what does it kindling in you? You need to remember. Is it kindling restraint or is it kindling indulgence? It turns into yajna when restraint is kindled. Are you able to follow the sequence? From the external object, I am the external object. From this external object, the sound is produced. You hear the sound. When you say, adile na solliten, sound dies, hearing happens. Hearing dies, indulgence or restraint can happen. Dies naka, don't take it literally, poetically, as it were. Poetically, as it were. Idhula konja stretch panni imagine pannikonga, dying as it were. Not the death, not the death of the sound. This is where you need to remember the yajna ritual. When the ahuti goes into the fire, the ahuti dies as it were in the fire, no? Just as the ahuti dies as it were in the fire, the sound dies as it were in the ear, in the sense center, in the mind, and then it says hearing happens. So sound dies, hearing is kindled. Now the hearing dies, the sound, now sound to hearing, yajna number 3. Yajna number 4 is the hearing dies, something else is kindled. What is that something else that can be kindled? ரெண்டு பாசிபிலிட்டி இருக்கு. When the sound enters you, you have a possibility of listening, not listening. No. Always at every level you have a choice. When the neighbor is drilling, you have a choice to pay attention to it, or you have a choice not to pay attention to it. Similarly, after the hearing happens, something is kindled. What is it that can be kindled? Two things can be kindled. What are the two things? Indulgence or restraint. I will explain that second. Adukku innum na varala. I'm still trying to explain the yagya number 3 to yagya number 4. Yagya number 4 explain panna aarambikala innum. So sound dies, hearing is kindled. Sound dies, hearing is kindled. You don't get carried away by the sound. You remember the divine that enables you to hear the sound. You remember the divine that enables you to hear the sound. When we say you enabling the, remember the divine that enables to hear the sound, doesn't mean you will not hear the sound properly. Doesn't mean you will not understand the sound properly. All that is happening as it is happening now, one extra factor is added now. All that you are doing now, you will continue to do, and one more extra factor is added. What is that extra factor? The divine is added. So sound to hearing. Where does sound dies? Sound dies in the sense center, which is in the mind. The sound dies in the sense center, which is in the mind. How can you say that? Your own experience. When you are mentally preoccupied, you don't hear the sound, no? When you are engrossed in reading a book, your mind is so preoccupied in that book. When the telephone rings, you don't hear it. When the person standing next to you calling your name 10 times, you don't hear it. Therefore, for hearing to die, as it were, where it should reach? It should reach the mind. Therefore, for sense perceptions, two things play a role. What are the two things that play a role? The senses and the mind. The senses and the mind. So the senses, the sound that goes through the senses dies as it were in the mind, and then you say, I hear. This is yajna. Now this is not yajna. This can be converted into yajna. This is what is happening in a human being, and this can be converted into an yajna. How this can be converted into a yajna? How this can be converted into an yajna? This can be converted into an yajna when the divine is remembered. Normally what happens? The sight, the sound itself is so, the sound itself is so, carries you away completely. The senses itself carries you away completely. Sir, adu senses carrying away completely puriyலையே சார்னா அதுக்கு தான் கிளாஸ்ல ஃப்ரெஷ்ஷா உட்கார கூடாது. Chapter 2 knowledge ஓட உட்காரணும். Because in chapter 2 we have already seen in chapter 2 we have already seen how the senses carry the mind away by remembering the divine that can be avoided. So Sound from the world enters and you hear. Hearing. When you are hearing, you can hear the word and understand the word at the same time. Remember the divine also. Now you are performing yajna. As you are seeing, you are seeing the object and plus the so plus divine becomes the common denominator here. So plus divine becomes the common denominator here. Don't try all this in the negative areas. யாராவது திட்டும்போது God திட்டுறாருன்னு நினைச்சுக்கிட்டுமா சார்லாம், don't do all that. Start from the positive areas. Don't start from the painful areas, because we always want to deal with our pain in life. See, the motive for coming to this knowledge is the removal of pain. Therefore, wherever we are in pain, we want to use this knowledge. That's a very, very limited approach to knowledge. That's a very wrong approach to knowledge. We should not be doing that. Sir, pain deal பண்ணலனா இங்க knowledge வரவே மாட்டோம் sir. Why do we even come here? We come here because we are in pain. The wrong, ignorant attitude of life is this. The wrong understanding of life, the wrong attitude of life is this. What is this? I am a victim. World gives me trouble. God gives me trouble. These are the two. World gives me trouble. World means objects and beings give me trouble. God means horoscope, stars. God gives me. So nevertheless, the whole creation is there as though only to give you pain. Now we are constantly looking for a solution to this pain. And Vedanta is not a solution to that pain. Incidentally, it can be used for that also. But in Yajna Karma, don't restrict it to that as though it's a pain remover. It's not a pain remover. It is the knowledge giver. What is the knowledge? The knowledge that you are divine. Remember that. You should always remember that. The Vedantic knowledge is not to remove your pains. Incidentally, it may get removed also, but that is not the intention. The purpose of this knowledge is to say that you are divine. It is to give you this knowledge that you are divine. So remember the divine abdinaka sir abdina yara. Then if somebody is abusing me, I will remember the divine. Don't try that. You will want to kill that divine and you want to kill that person also. When negative things and all, you take the responsibility upon yourself. When you are seeing something good and noble and all that, start trying to remember the divine there first. First start from the positive side and then try to deal with the pain. Don't try to deal with the pain first. Even after coming to the Shastras, we have a tamasic intellect. What is the tamasic intellect? First, let me use this knowledge to remove my pain and then we will see the divine. It doesn't work that way. Do the other way. Then only the pain goes away by itself. So, what is it, Yajna number 3? The sound dies, hearing. The sound dies, the hearing is kindled. When the hearing is kindled, 2 things you can do at the same time. What are the 2 things you can do at the same time? Ada Yajna. Multitasking the Yajna. Doing 2 things at the same time is Yajna. What are the 2 things? You remember the word, you understand the word, you know the implied meaning, direct meaning, and symbolic meaning, and all that you understand. Simultaneously also you understand. Simultaneously also you remember the divine. This is known as yajna. This is how you can practice worshipping through sense perceptions. This is how worshipping can happen through sense perceptions. Before I go to yajna number 4, there are a couple of clarifications which I will take it up. Bharat, is it possible to perceive without any of the organs of senses? No. If jnana indriyas is not there, perception cannot happen. For example, a human is born without any of the sense organ. How can the person perceive? Then we are not talking about a human being, we are talking about an earthworm. You know the hierarchy of species, no? Tamil kuda they say no. Or arivu ulla prani, rendu arivu ulla prani, anju arivu irukkudu, 6 arivu, manuஷனுக்கு மட்டும் 6 arivu இருக்குது, we say no. What is this? If one sense organ alone is present, we say or arivu. If two senses are, if two jnana indriyas are present, we say two ways of gaining knowledge. 3 sense organs means 3, 4 means 4, 5 means 5. Human beings 5 plus 1, 6. What is the 6th one? The antakarana, the inner instrument. The mind and the intellect. The inner instrument. Sukshma, subtle body. Therefore, is it for a human being born without any of the sense organs? No. A human being can be born with one or two not being there. If all the 5 is not there, he is dead. World cannot enter that. He cannot have any knowledge of the world after that. Here we are using perception and knowledge synonymous. Bharat, is it what you are asking? Where are you? Bharat கொஞ்சம் unmute பண்ணனும். அப்பதான் அவர் பேசுறது கேட்க எனக்கு. Yeah, Bharat.
So, yeah. So, Ramli, the question is what I was a little. So, when I was going through some of the medical histories of people, let's say, for example, some notes came.
Yes.
So, there are people who have become vegetables.
Yes.
For example, their senses have failed through an accident.
Yes.
The mind is functioning.
Correct.
The mind is functioning.
Correct.
So, they are not able to perceive because their senses are not in action. I cannot touch, I cannot eat, or maybe the thing. They are alive. They are alive and still they may be not born, but what has happened is over a period of time it has gradually failed.
Yes.
So in that case, the person exists.
Yes.
They are not able to perceive.
Yes.
And but at the same time, only if you don't perceive, you will not be able to kindle the response.
Yes.
So in such cases, how does the yajna happen? Was more the thought that I had.
Yes.
I framed the question that way.
Yes. Now, in the case of this person, yajna is not possible. He has to wait for the instruments to get all right.
Okay.
On his behalf, we can pray.
Okay.
That possibility is there. That's where Vedanta brings in that possibility where on his behalf I can do it. Because yajna being subtle and remembrance and all, which is not of the literal physical, I can do that for him. I can pray for him. I can do it on his behalf. Power of attorney வாங்கிக்கலாம்.
Okay.
பவர் வாங்கிட்டு நாம் பண்ணலாம். பவர் வாங்கிட்டு கெட்டது பண்ணக்கூடாது, அவ்வளவுதான்.
All right.
அவ்வளவுதான். That's all. But then for him since none of the jnanendriyas are functioning, we can't say that technically speaking. Bharat, now I'm giving you the answer. We can't say that technically. My eyes are not functioning now. Now my eyes are functioning. So eyes plus an external instrument can still make it function, which is what medical sciences is all about. There is an aid that they bring in. It's an extraordinary thing they do. It is an aid that is brought about so that even if the functions, even if the organs deteriorate, the functions can be still maintained. Like if a person cannot hear, I can use the aid to hear. If I can't see anything at all, one of the wonderful thing they discover, not to read, they have a special book for the blind, they call it Braille or something.
Braille.
So where they can touch and see, like even in the phone, in the remote and all, it is there. In the lift also it is there.
Right.
In the lift button also it is there, so that the blind fellow can just touch and press the right button as to where he. Now it means somehow for you to function, data has to enter you. Then only you can function. Now it can function through an aid or some other method. Or I can pray for that on that person's behalf. For all practical purposes, jnanendriyas and karmendriyas not functioning for that person. Can he do yajna? How can the person perceive? He will not be able to perceive. He will not be able to perceive, which is his which is the lack of instrument. That's why it's called indriyas. Tamilla vandu arivun solrom. That which gives you the knowledge of the world. You get the knowledge of the world through the senses only, or the senses can take the aid of something, but nevertheless it has to go through this.
Okay.
Nevertheless it has to go through this only. Because of the subtlety, because of the indriyas being there, because of the indriyas subtlety, the subtle part which is in the mind, with the aid, a deficient instrument, a deficient organ, the eye, with the aid can still have the same perception. Because the mind is still alert and alive. Are you able to follow? Therefore, it is the aid that happens there. But for perceptions to happen, the senses, it cannot happen without the. It cannot happen without the senses. Without the jnanendriyas, he cannot perceive anything. That is why it's called, instead of saying sense organ, we call it as organs of knowledge. Even though we say jnanendriyas means organs of perception, here perception means what? Organs of knowledge. Organs of knowledge means the world, the world is existing, and for me to work around in the world, I need to have these senses.
Right. One small clarification, if I can ask, otherwise
Yes.
other people are waiting.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. The question I have, so all these indriyanis are required to contact the world. We agree. I agree, Swamiji. The Guruji, that is fine.
Yeah.
But the one aspect is they are also saying that people can connect through the mind.
Yes.
Connect between the minds. For example, I can connect without using any of these indriyanis, but inside the what you call as a mind and intellect, I can connect with some. So I don't require any of these indriyanis to go through the yajna at all, right? I mean, so in that case, I don't have anything. So I can still perceive, I can still do all that. So is it possible?
Number one, that is possible to a person who has got the senses and the pranas under absolute control. It is possible.
Okay.
It is possible to one who has reached an extraordinary level of self-control.
Okay.
Since 99.9% don't have it, we say that is not possible, don't try it.
Okay.
But per se, is it possible? Is it possible? You can't say no. Neither can you say it is imaginary. It is possible. It is possible to one who has an extraordinary control. What is known as power of thought. What we know as the power of sankalpa. It is known as the power of sankalpa. All that they use so many modern terminologies and all that. I'm not against all that, but it is discussed already is what I'm saying. It is called the power of sankalpa. Sankalpa Shakti we say. The power of sankalpa. It can directly go. It means to one who is, it means the giver and the receiver has to be tuned in so perfectly. Shastric proof, Shastric example, Shastric proof is Dakshinamurti teaching the four Sanat Kumaras.
Exactly. Beautiful. Yeah, that's correct.
Sanat Kumaras, Dakshinamurti teaching the four Sanat Kumaras. Nothing he is doing. These fellows are also not doing anything. The Dakshinamurti is also not doing anything, but they are tuned in so well. Correct password போட்டிருக்காங்க ரெண்டு பேரும் அர்த்தம். Zoom கிளாஸுக்கு வரணும்னா கூட கரெக்ட் பாஸ்வேர்ட் போட்டா தான் வர முடியுது. They know the correct password. That's all it means. What is the correct password? இல்லையா? வெங்கட் கொடுக்கிற பாஸ்வேர்டு கிடையாது அது. அது வந்து வெங்கட் கொடுக்கிற பாஸ்வேர்டு கிடையாது. It is that which comes out of extraordinary control. Today people have given it a mystical meaning and clairvoyance, and they go into such a weird discussion into all that. Vedanta straight away dismisses that and say all this don't exist. In that sense, it doesn't exist.
Okay.
In that sense, it doesn't exist. In the way that people talk about Siddhi powers, clairvoyance, and I'm sitting here, I'm sending out waves and waves of goodness, and those kind of things and all doesn't exist. If there are two individuals who are tuned in, it can happen. It can happen only in one category of Guru and Shishya. Guru sitting anywhere can send the sankalpa. The Shishya sitting anywhere can receive it, because they are tuned in so much all the time. The tuning in happens only through the control. What is the control? The control of the senses, the control of the pranas. Yajna verse number 29, we will see that also. The pranas also we will see. So an extraordinary control of the senses, the pranas, the ragadvesha.
Ragadvesha, correct.
Moon irukku. The sense control, the prana control, the ragadvesha control. When all these three are when all these three are well under control, it does happen. It does happen. Seriya, did I answer you? But not in the way that people talk about powers and clairvoyance. I don't know what all words they talk, and they make it so complicated.
I agree. That's right.
Where it can be seen or misunderstood as solving one's problem. Now, because all the time we are only seeking solutions to our problems, no?
Exactly.
All the time, what are we doing? We have a problem and we are seeking solutions to the problems only. Vedanta is not a problem-solving thing. Vedanta is the remembrance of the divine. Is it okay, Bharat?
Thank you. Thank you, Guruji.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Sriram made a statement last week. I work in the medical field with my perceived goal that my work benefits humanity. But you told me that my work unfortunately involves hurting other species like animals during testing in order to benefit humanity. Okay, yes, correct. Unfortunately, this act is against dharma or the absolute ideal that Brahman is in everything and I'm oblivious to the animal's pain. So the absolute ideal is in conflict with my limited ideal. So if I remember God, Brahman constantly and realize every second, I can't do my work effectively since unfortunately today's science needs me to do it. This is what this practical quote came about. Idealism
precedes experience and
precedes
cynicism
experience.
follows.
Yeah, அது இந்த கம்ப்யூட்டர்ல எல்லாம் ஒரு இல்லையா புக்கா இருந்தா நல்லா வருது, கம்ப்யூட்டர்ல வரமாட்டேன்றது இன்னும் சரி. I'm struggling with it. Idealism precedes experience, cynicism follows it. Oh, correct. Yeah, correct. I fully agree with that with that quote. So how do I reconcile between the two and still do yajna karma while staying in the field? Should I switch to an alternate field? First thing, you cannot switch to an alternate field because that is your swadharma karma. You have spent enough time in it. You have gained an expertise in that field. Having gained that expertise in that field, you have to work in that field is the dharma. First dharma is that. You can't switch over the field. Exactly like what Krishna told Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. Your expertise is in Kshatriya, your expertise is in battlefield means you can't switch over. You can't switch over. Or by switching over, nothing is going to change. Therefore, the first thing is to practice dharma, you don't have to switch on to an alternative field. It can be practiced in, everybody can practice it in their field of activity itself. That is answering the second part of the question first. How do I reconcile between the two and still do yajna karma? This is the very good question. How do I reconcile between the two and still do yajna karma? Now, first thing that you need to understand when you make a choice is, are alternatives available? When alternatives are available, I need not cause pain. That's the first lesson. When alternatives are available, when I say alternative mean, when I can not use a helpless species and I can use a species who can voluntarily come. Now, when alternatives are available, I need to exercise the choice of least pain. Vedanta is not saying zero pain. Zero pain, no pain is impossible. What it means here is the awareness of exploring all the alternatives and taking up that which causes the least pain. That's what it means. If I do that, I am practicing yajna karma because I have developed an awareness. I have developed a sensitivity. What is the sensitivity? The sensitivity to not cause harm. Number 3. That is stage. That is the second stage. Second point. The third point is are you the doer or are you the decider? When I am the doer, my responsibility is restricted to this. When I am the decider, my responsibility becomes more. Most of the time, we will start with being a doer and end up in the decider. So as long as I am the doer, I need to ensure that I bring in the right attitude. The moment I become the decider, I start exploring on all these alternatives and then take the right and then take the choice of the least pain, not zero pain, the least pain. Because of this understanding that life involves pain. The definition of life, this is the Upanishadic definition of life. One of the extraordinary definition. The Upanishadic definition of life is Adi Vyadi. Adi Vyadi, they say. Adi Vyadi means physical pain and mental pain is life. Less or more is the distinction. Second is, am I causing it or not? That's all the distinction is. Now, what I was saying last week is, people blindfoldedly for their own welfare do not mind. They are blissfully unaware of the pain that is caused to the other species. In awareness, you will cause minimum pain. One. Number two, even when you cause pain, there will be a, even when you cause pain, there will be a, even when you have to cause that minimum pain, there will be a seeking forgiveness from that. It all depends upon the level of sensitivity. That's all it means. Field of activity doesn't change. Field of activity remains the same. There will be a sensitivity. The sensitivity is taken to extremes in Vedas. The sensitivity is taken to extremes in Vedas, where the Krishna Yajurveda, the Veda starts with prayer asking for forgiveness from the Darbha grass. When I reach a next level, I don't need to cut the Darbha grass, and I can sit and do Manasa Karma itself. Where I cannot do it, that Manasam Karma, where I need to do it physically, when I do something physically, I will be causing harm to some. Now, what I do is, I am aware of it. What is it that I am aware of? I am aware of the alternatives, and between the alternatives, I choose the one which is the least pain. You know, these medical colleges have this committee and all that. And I'm part of. I'm in that. I'm in one of those. I'm also in one of that. Every year they ask for 25 lab animals experiments. They ask, we need 25 this year, we need 30 this year, we need 40 this year. They ask, and we have to sit and say yes or no. Adula 3 பேர் சைன் பண்ணனும். இந்த 3 பேர் சைன் பண்ணாதான் it will go. அந்த 3 பேர்ல நான் ஒரு ஆளு. And when I come for that, the professors and then they'll get very irritated, because I keep asking, is there anybody who has done this before? Can't we take that? Why do we have to do this here? Can't we take that? Have we explored enough that, supposing if somebody has done it in America, we don't have to sit and do the same thing here. No, we can take it and then say, if it is still needed, we will do. Okay, 30 vanuma, why not keep it to 10? At one stage, one of the fellows got so angry in the meeting, class lo solla mudiyadhu, he started abusing me. This is why useless fellows like you coming and sitting and disturbing the work, and what do you know this, what do you know that? I said, adella enakku theriyadappa, enakku கூப்பிட்டுருக்காங்க, I'm coming and doing this. My job here is to ensure that whether alternatives are explored or not. That's all my job is. I am not a medical person, I am not all that, but then there are some common sense principles that we have to include also. So I am 2004 la na pannina irukken. Yeah, that side of life of mine, no, in the example solradhanaala you people come to know. Otherwise nobody here knows that there is and mari 3-4 activity I am doing simultaneously also. Now it means what? We explore the alternative, that's all. There is no need to change the field of activity. In this field of activity, I am doing this. Are you okay till now? The last thing is yajna karma. How to do yajna karma in this? Now, idella worldly way of dealing with it. Common sense way of dealing with it. Now, how to do yajna karma? Now, yajna karma comes in when you get rid of the notion of I am the doer. Yajna karma comes in when you get rid of the notion that I am the doer. In the Bhagavad Gita, later on Krishna tells Arjuna, though killing, you will not incur sin, Arjuna, he says. One of the extraordinary statements that a person can make in life is this: though killing, you will not incur sin. Now, that statement can mean only two things. Either Krishna doesn't know what he is talking. That is one part. He's just saying something. Or something is so deep and profound in that. What is it that is so deep and profound in that? Ultimately speaking, all the problems boils down to the doership. It's not the doing, the doership. So what yajna karma here is, in yajna karma he says, if you have to do the research and sciences and all that, what you are doing, if you have to do that, how to do yajna karma there? Consciously bring in the idea that you are not the doer. When you eliminate the doership, yajna karma happens. This is where Vedanta comes and says the doership is that which brings in all this. What does the doership means? To put it very simply, doership means the sense of value that I give it to my doing, as in it is going to save the humanity. The doership is, I can have this doership attitude as I am talking to a small group of people here, as though I am the one who is going to save all the 60-70. No. Now what I do is, I am not the one who is going to save the 60-70. This is what my expertise is. This is what I can do. I do it to the best of my ability. No arrogation involved. So you can do, or everybody should do yajna karma only. That is where this common formula of eliminating the doership and continue the doing is the formula for everybody to do yajna karma in their respective field of activity.
So, Aravindan uncle, நீங்க சொன்ன like see, when you drop that sense of doership, பண்றதுனால்தான் I'm going to make a difference in the thought விட்டுட்டேனாலே and with that naturally the sense of drive to do that activity also naturally reduces, doesn't it? இப்ப சுவாமி தான் எல்லாமே பண்றார், or God is doing everything, and the feeling all the time வந்துச்சுனா நேச்சுரலா உங்களுக்கு அந்த கர்மா பண்ண எனக்கு அந்த சயின்ஸ்ல பெருசா பண்ற ஆர்வம் எனக்கு நேச்சுரலா குறைய ஆரம்பிச்சிரும் தான் நான் நினைக்கிறேன், or நானே பாக்குறேன். So how does then one continue to be in the field when someone is being directed, his thoughts are slightly being directed elsewhere? To how can one do that? So that seems like an eternal contrary to me.
Yes, like, eternal conflict. This is an eternal conflict. Now how does this work is like this. Now a doer means a value that he has placed on his doing. A value that he has placed on his doing, which is what they call as motivation. A value that they have placed on their own doing. Now, the value that they place on their doing happens at the cost of not recognizing so many factors. When I recognize there are so many factors, of the so many factors, I am also one. Doership will go and I can still continue with my activity. Now, where the attitude comes in is, okay, to give a very simple example, I always give this example. You want to get something done. I can say, I am so dependent on you, only you can do this. Another thing is, there are 10 people to do. I am giving you an opportunity to do. Now, there is a difference. There are 10 people who can do, but you are given an opportunity to do. Now, in the second case, out of 10, 8 will say, 8 will not want to take it up. Why? Because when I do, there should be an extra value to my doing that should go into the action. When I do anything, something extra of mine must be in that action. That's what is that's what people call as a motivation, energy, drive, and all that. Supposing if I say there are 100 people collectively doing it, immediately what happens? Every individual efficiency starts coming down.
Not necessarily. If there are 100 people coming together to complete a project, but I have a specific role in that, right?
Yes.
Even though there are 100 people coming together.
Yes.
So my motivation still remains high because that my contribution is significant because it's a part of the whole in one sense.
If that understanding that it is part of the whole, that's what no doership is. If I understand it as part of the whole, there is no doership there. Everybody has a particular role to play.
But I still believe that I am doing that part. Even though it is a part of the whole, I'm thinking that I am doing that part.
That is where that I-ness significantly reduces that person's capacity. Which is what I said earlier. About half an hour back in the same discussion today, I said, significantly the I brings in a bhara to the personality. There is a heaviness that comes to the personality because of that limited I-ness that he has. He understands that he's part of the team, he's part of the whole and all that, but still he has that I-ness brings in a bhara, a heaviness to the personality. So because of that heaviness, that individual still goes through this worry and anxiety, lack of efficiency, affected by things not going in their way. All this happens to him, no? All this is still because of what? That I-ness goes in with two factors. I-ness goes in with two factors. What are the two factors? One is the planning, second is the expectation. One is the planning, second is the expectation. Now, doership has got nothing to do with the planning. Doership comes in only in relation to the expectation. There are so many factors which is beyond my control. I can plan. When they say in the execution part, there are so many factors beyond my control. When those factors which are beyond my control comes in, a person with doership will be extremely affected. A person without doership will still be very sincere, would still be very dedicated, and will still do the hard work as in anybody else. But only difference is what? He recognizes that apart from his planning, in the implementation, in the execution, and in the result, there are so many factors which is beyond one's control. Now, the very fact that recognizing there are factors beyond control itself can give tremendous fear to people. will take away can cause fear, can take away the motivation. They can become very lackadaisical, or they can become very superstitious. What we are saying is, as much as you plan and work and be sincere and dedicated and all that, there are other factors also involved. Recognize that.
Correct. Arvind uncle, எனக்கு ஒரே ஒரு thought இருக்கா.
Yes.
So even if, see, this recognition that despite all this, there is something else that is also in playing true.
Yes.
But I feel a scientist in my field, even if he doesn't believe in say God or Brahman or this other factor having a role to play,
yes,
he does believe that even if he plans everything out perfectly, he may not get the right result because there are so many variables involved in a biological system which is so complex.
Correct.
So he knows that அதனால்தான் நீங்க சொன்னேன், இப்ப ஒரு ஐஎகுக் மீட்டிங்ல போய் உட்கார்ந்து ஒரு எக்ஸ்பெரிமெண்ட் ஆல்ரெடி பண்ணிருக்க அமெரிக்கால ஏன்டா பண்ணோம்னா நிறைய வேரியபிள்ஸ் இருக்கு, அதை எக்ஸாக்டா ரெப்ளிகேட் பண்ண முடியல நம்மளால இப்ப இந்தியால உட்காந்து. சோ அதே எக்ஸ்பெரிமெண்ட் திருப்பி பண்ண வேண்டியிருக்கு.
Correct.
But we have to justify why these many number of animals are required, why we have, or how we can do this in the least amount of animals.
Correct.
So the point is, even if the scientist doesn't have the nambike that there is this external factor called God or Brahman, he is still aware of the fact that he is not in control of the experiment because of the variables involved, which are many in a biological system, which is what makes it very difficult. In say math or physics, you can fix the constants and then work on one variable, single out a variable, whereas in a biological system you can't do that because of so many variables being involved. So other way gives you a sense of humility that you are not in control.
Now when you have recognized those variables and if it has brought in a humility, you may not know the word God, you may not know the word Brahman, and there is no need to know there is a word called God or Brahman or anything. The very humility itself is lack of doership. That very humility itself is the very humility itself is the lack of doership, and that lack of doership is what keeps that person more efficient. That's all. So in a way, he is also practicing yajna karma only. He may not know only this. In the way that we are explaining and all, he may not know, but still the same law is at play. Like, I may not know how the law of gravity works, but I am still using that only. Similarly, this person here, he may not know that there is a thing called God or Brahman, but the very fact that he has become humble, it means what? He has the right knowledge. He is practicing yajna karma.
But you're also right in the sense that, but at the same time, what he'll try to do as a scientist, what I'll try to do if I didn't have this perspective was, I'll always try to bring those variables, even though they're multifold, under my control. Somehow I'll try to standardize it and fix certain things and try to bring that under my control.
Correct.
So
all this you do. As you are doing all this, one thing is also very clear to you. What? How much ever you try to bring things under your control, standardize and all that, still it doesn't. So somewhere down the line, I bow down. When I'm bowing down, doesn't mean I stop my activity. That's the only difference. I continue my activity and still bow down. That's what yajna karma is all about. Generally, what people misunderstand is the moment if they bow down, activity itself stops. Like that's why I started this class by saying, I want coffee in the morning. I sit and pray to God. Now, God is not going to come and give me that cup of coffee. I still have to go get up and do everything only. a human being's life is not only human being's life. Life itself is this combination of two. Doing, in doing, the technology, the knowledge, the advancement, all that comes into that one word called doing, plus the unknowable. 3 words. Just remember these 3 words. With this, I conclude for today. The known, the unknown, the unknowable. Recognizing the unknowable factor is humility.
And at that point, it becomes work, becomes worship. Is it?
At that point, it becomes worship. Correct. At that point, it becomes worship. Yajna karma. The known, the unknown, the unknowable. Collectively, for all human beings, if collectively the total intelligence of all human beings, past, present, future put together also, something will remain unknowable. That recognition. It's not only a single individual that we are talking about here. The collective wisdom of the past, the present, the future, you combine all this together. Still there will be something which is unknowable. That factor of unknowable is what is Yajnaka. Recognizing that there is this unknowable factor is what we give it a word. What we have done in Vedanta is we have systematized this, we have given it a name, we have developed a whole lot of system of thinking around it. That's all. It boils down to this factor. Seriya?
Yeah.
In
Thank
that
you.
way, it becomes the known, the unknown, the unknowable. What was not known yesterday is known today. What is known today, what is unknown today will be known tomorrow. So logically, if you proceed logically, there will come a time where human being will know everything. What was not known yesterday is known today. Similarly, what is not known today will be known tomorrow. Continue the same logic. A time will come where human being will know. A human being can know everything, will know everything. Vedanta comes and says that arrogation is ignorance. For how much ever the past, present, future, all intelligence put together also, something will still remain unknowable. And because of this being unknowable, there is the humility, recognizing that factor is worship. Are you able to follow? In the angle, think in this angle with these 3 words.
Right.
The known, the known, the unknown, the unknowable. Seriya?
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
Prasanna. Hari Om sir. With relation to Sri Ram's doubt, is it not that in present days we are driven by utilitarian ideals? All may not be Swadharma of many people. Can that be a factor for their confusion? That is why they need motivation, etc. Now, human beings are fundamentally utility oriented, result oriented, benefit oriented. Knowledge is required not to be utility oriented. Now, Swadharma is not, Swadharma and motivation has no connection. Swadharma means a field of activity which is of my nature. That's all it means. But the effort and dedication and direction is still the same there also. So, Swadharma by itself doesn't mean motivation is assured, guaranteed. It doesn't mean that. Instead of doing something which is alien to my nature, if I am doing Swadharma, it becomes that Swadharma is a comfortable aid. But the effort is the same, everything remains the same. Utilitarian need is not the cause for lack of, they need constant motivation. The constant motivation is needed because of disappointment. The constant motivation is needed because of exaggerated expectations. The exaggerated expectations and the disappointments is where people suffer by, and we need to keep giving them constant motivations. Sumati is asking, eliminating doership sounds like not taking responsibility for your actions. Is that not dangerous? Eliminating doership is not taking responsibility for your actions. Is that not dangerous? Very good question. Very good question. What it means is eliminating doership. If you have to eliminate doership, you need to know what is doership. What is doership? Doership is of a few factors. One is an exaggerated value I give to my activity. Second is not recognizing the contribution and not recognizing the support that I get from the others. Third is I believe that I am the all-knower, all-powerful entity. This is what doership is all about. Now, when we say get rid of doership, what do we have to get rid of? The first thing that you have to get rid of is the belief that I am all-knower, all-powerful. That goes out. Second thing that goes out in doership is a sense of a black market value I give to my activity. I recognize that everybody does everything, but what I do is slightly better than the other. The husband tells the wife that you are also taking care of the house and all that, but what you need to understand is my contribution is slightly better than yours. The wife says, no, my contribution is slightly better than yours. Doership is in distinguishing the quality of my doing is superior in quality in relation to the others. Now, eliminating the doership means recognizing that what I do is not something extra. I am teaching Vedanta doesn't mean I am doing something superior. Somebody is doing something else doesn't mean it is inferior. Doership has this notion that what I am doing is always qualitatively superior than others. What is the indication of doership? I am not suitably rewarded, sir, they say, for what I do and what I get in return. These are all the indications of doership. So in Vedanta, when we say eliminate the doership, that's why I quoted this sentence. What is the sentence from Krishna? Though killing, you will not incur sin. I tell you, for last 40 years of studying Gita, every day, at least 100 times, I remember this statement. Though killing, you don't incur sin. Though killing, you don't incur sin. It means sin is not from the doing, sin is coming from something else. Sin is not from the action, sin is from something else. What is it? The doership.
No, but then you can absolve all, if it's just your attitude, the thing is your attitude.
Yes. A person with right attitude will do the right action automatically.
But even in this case of Mr. Sriram,
yes,
he was worried about the cruelty to animals that was being caused.
Yes.
And you said it depends on whether he's the doer or the decider.
Yes.
But does that mean that if somebody else decides what you have to do,
yes,
then there is no sin if you just have to follow instructions?
Yes, correct. I am a soldier. The duty of the soldier is to fight. Duty of the soldier is not to decide whether war is right or not. If he is told to fight, if he is told to shoot, he has to shoot. If he is told to retreat, he has to retreat.
But then if he feels that that is wrong, then he shouldn't be doing it in the first place.
Then he should quit. Then he should quit. Then he is not fit to be a soldier. Neither he has to take responsibility for it. Like that fellow who dropped the bomb. I gave this example many number of times. Real history this is. The fellow who dropped the bomb in Hiroshima, Nagasaki. I have given his example, no? How many times he tried to commit suicide? For what? He is not the doer there. He is not the doer. He is told to drop, he dropped. Now, why does he have to take it upon himself in that way?
But then it's like he did do it, right? So,
sorry?
I mean, that was his work and...
he did his work. Why does he have to come back and say that I destroyed people? Why does he have to say I destroy people? Destroying 10 is okay, destroying 10,000 is wrong. Only when numbers goes high, we become sensitive. If I am worried about hurting people, I should not be joining the army in the first place. If I am worrying about hurting people, army itself should not be there in the first place. Then why do we need an army? We get into absurdities then. We get into absurdities.
Yes.
What we are saying here is, when you are given a responsibility, are you the doer or are you the decider? When I am told to do and I have agreed to be under that person to do, I have to do.
But then that agreeing itself makes you a decider.
No.
You're
Why you decided?
That is your choice to do it, right?
Why did you decide that? Why did you decide that?
At some point, it is your choice.
No. Why did you do that? It is your choice. What drove that choice?
So
what drove the choice? Huh?
Yes, I'm just saying. So at some point, it is your responsibility, and you.
What drove that choice? Answer that. What drove that choice?
Because you thought it was all right, the right thing to do at that time.
Livelihood, survival. Livelihood, survival. Bring it down to that. Boil it down to that. You should not get emotional in thinking. You should be very clear when you think. You shouldn't get emotional at all. What boils down? What brought that fellow to make that decision? He chose to go into the army for what? Yes, it is his responsibility. He chose to go into the army for what? Did he go into the army thinking that there will not be war at all? There should not be a war at all. I should not be hurting and harming anybody at all. Now, when he got into the, what made him to make that? What made him to make that choice? What drove him to make that choice? For that he is responsible. For that he is responsible.
Yeah.
For that he is responsible. We are not saying he is not responsible for. For that he is responsible because he made the choice of going there. No. He can't say I will join the army, but country should not go for a war. I join the army means country can go for a war and my job is to bomb. I can get bombed or I will bomb. When you make a choice, you are responsible for the choice. What drives you to make that choice? Always impassionately ask this question to yourself. Me, you means not you, I'm telling anybody. When I make a choice, I need to ask myself dispassionately, what is driving this choice? I chose to speak on Vedanta. What is driving this choice of mine, sitting and talking? I have to ask myself dispassionately. Impassionately, I have to ask. Is it because of the name and fame that I'm going to get? Or is it because of the money that I'm going to get? Or is it because of the popularity? What is it that is driving me to make this? What drives me? We don't think so deep, no. We take so many things for granted and we continue, and which is what we say, thinking is very poor in a human being. We take certain things for granted and we build our arguments on that. Vedanta goes to the core and it says, start from that basics. Are you able to follow? In that way, he is responsible for it. Why does he have to feel bad for that? Why does he have to take that exaggerated, even then the exaggerated notion has no meaning, because he made a choice.
I don't know.
Vedanta doesn't take the responsibility away. Vedanta is the only knowledge that says it makes you fully responsible, law of karma. And then you are not bound by law of karma also. You are not bound by law of karma if you can do that also. So there are two things. One is bound by karma, another is freedom from karma. Now in answering the question freedom from karma, how do you get freedom from karma? Law of karma, cause and effect. Eliminate the doership. In the process of doing, think about this. What? You are responsible. It's not easy. And emotion starts playing a lot. When we start thinking, emotion starts playing a lot. Therefore, we need to be very clear. In the case of this Hiroshima guy, the ego is pricking him so much. He's feeling so bad that if I didn't drop the bomb, I would have saved so many. If I didn't drop the bomb, I would have saved so many. In the totality of life, individual cannot take such a high stance. That's what doership is all about. In the totality of life, you can't take, an individual cannot afford to take such a high moral egoistic stance. That's what getting rid of doership means. What people are doing is not recognizing the totality of the thing. They take only their thing and they believe that I alone exist, as though I am the cause for everything. Doership means there is a totality which is, and you are part of the totality. Understand it in this way. Is what eliminating the doership is all about. Think about it. If we have still on this, we will start with the next class with this only. And then I will go on to the yajnas. If you still have anything, I have overstretched to my Zoom, we can overstretch. Yeah. எல்லாம் அவங்க வீட்டில் சாப்பிட்டுனே கூட கேட்கலான்றதுனால I overstretched it a little bit. We'll continue next week, still in the same point. If there are still some clarifications, think about it and come back. We will start the session with this, if there are clarifications. Thank you.